Welcome to the March 10th, 2020 episode of Reactive Consciousness, the in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And we got another really great show here for you. Reactive Consciousness has a lot of really cool video game news to go over this time around, so I think there's some really exciting things that happened this week. I don't know what your feeling on things here is, Lotus, but I think there's some pretty cool shit here.
Not even a little bit exciting, so I guess that averages out to a reasonable amount of excitement.
Okay, great. Well, at least you're bringing us down before the fans can complain about it.
Yeah, that's true. They don't know to wait till the end to be like, wait a minute, Lotus sucks.
You don't even need to load your thumbs downs. I mean, I was already taken down a peg. So, so anyway, the first big thing, and this is like big news for like PC gamers and big fans of first-person shooters and Half-Life. But Black Mesa has hit version 1.0. It is out of early access finally after all of these years.
Yeah, it's been like how long? I've heard talk about this
over
forever.
5.
Okay.
Over 5 years. Yeah, I think it's actually may even be longer than that. I think they started working on it a long time ago. In fact,
it's been a while. I don't know how long, but it's been a while. I think it's
even longer than that. I think it's been in Steam Early Access for about 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So like, yeah, Black Mesa has been a big project for a long time. It started as a free mod in 2012. Wow, it is.
Jeez.
Yeah. That is an 8-year-old. It is an 8-year-old project, and so what this is it is a fan remake with Valve's blessing. So it's basic. It's an official remake.
It's official enough. Yeah.
It's an official remake to the point where they can sell it.
Okay.
And Valve, this is sold. You can buy this. This is no longer a free mod. It is $20 if you want to buy it right now. So it's an official mod. It's an official release, if you ask me. It's sold on Steam. There's no point in Valve remaking the game now because this was done. But there have been a couple remakes of Half-Life just in terms of versions and things like that. So like the original Half-Life, of course, is an insanely influential game. It changed how first-person shooters played.
Yeah,
there was nothing
made them
like it before
cinematic.
that.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, by today's standards, when you launch Half-Life, you're just like, I'm just sitting on the damn car. But like when that first launched, you weren't just running and gunning. Like, it was an experience with real story, not like Doom story where it's like there are monsters and they attack the base. Like, you're sitting in the opening cutscene of like a movie or something in the original Half-Life. It was wild when it first came out.
Yeah. So this is like the first game where so it's hard to conceptualize this with all like the Metroidvanias and stuff nowadays, but it is a linear experience, so there are sections of the games that you could call levels. However, they are in a continuous space. They go from one place to another.
That's
and
true.
You feel like you're going from one place to another. You can't go back. There's no backtracking or anything like that.
Yeah. But it is smooth. You'd walk into a new room, and then a title just fades in over your screen.
Exactly.
Announcing what the level name is. But yeah, bringing back Doom again. In Doom, you hit the exit button, there's a clear screen. You cleared it. Now we're going to load up a new level where there's nothing behind you. Like, the implication is that you move from one area to the next because you always start by a door that you can't go back through. But with Half-Life, you just walk there. It felt like it was a bigger game.
And it never really felt like in those games that it didn't really feel that there was like a nice progression. Like most levels were kind of like, this is a new level, this is a new level, and this is a new level.
More
they might
enemies,
have some sort of progression,
new enemy types,
but
harder enemies, and Half-Life did that, but there wasn't the craziest enemy variety. It was more story and context based. And one thing that I saw that really blew me away was the idea that there were enemy soldiers that definitely wanted you dead, but they were certainly not allied with the aliens. You could lure them into those tongue things from the ceiling that grab them up and eat them and stuff like
Exactly.
that. Like, you could let them fight it out, and it was just like, oh, there's this is not just a black and white kind of game.
It was insane. It is still to this day one of the games that I've, other than like arcadey kind of games,
Yeah.
quick kind of games, one of the games that I've replayed the most. It is that much fun, even still these days. It is still an achievement. It has aged well. However, the graphics wise, it's not what it used to be,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
people look a little like, okay.
Yeah, and so they remade this a couple times. What they ended up doing was they did a remake for the PS2 that
Yeah.
looks markedly a lot better than the original game. The graphics are way better in the PS2 version, and they have more realistic facial movements, things like that, extra modes. The biggest one being that there was a co-op mode that had its own story that
Yeah.
was specific.
Which I do appreciate, because it's not just like you play as Orange Gordon Freeman and you play as, I don't know, Green
No,
Gordon Freeman. Like, what? Like, it makes sense in the story.
two female scientists that actually have the other HEV suits that are
I was
missing.
just gonna mention that because
Yeah,
the game does start with 3 suits and you take one, or there were spaces for
the
three
middle
suits or
one.
whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, they somebody else did in fact take the other suits.
But yeah, that was a really great mode too. It's kind of like Portal 2's co-op mode. Portal 2's co-op mode
It's a
is
whole different thing. It has nothing to
a
do with the main
different thing.
story. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and there was co-op puzzle solving and everything
Yeah,
before.
which included puzzles that could only be solved co-op. Like, it's not just
Exactly.
like, again, it's not just the base game, but now you have 2 people. Like, it was designed for co-op.
Exactly. So then they remade it again when Half-Life 2 came out with Half-Life Source.
Yeah, that was the
Now,
one that I played.
yeah, Half-Life Source didn't do a whole lot to the original game. It kind of updated things a little bit. I remember people being really disappointed in this one because it basically just made the original more accessible, but it didn't do. It didn't. People were disappointed that it didn't include the improvements from the PS2
Yeah, like, it
version.
didn't warrant another purchase if you already owned the game.
Correct. So this is a huge deal. What they did was they completely remade the game. Every character in the game is a unique character, which I thought was
Oh, that's
pretty
cool. So
interesting.
not every scientist is the scientist.
Yeah, so in the original game, there are like 3 scientists and like 2 security guards, essentially,
Yeah.
and or it might even be 1 security guard, I think, and like they're not supposed to be the same person, but they're all generic like
Yeah, insert
scientists 1, 2, and
NPC
3.
here. Yeah.
Generic security guard, and they all have like the same voices and
Yeah.
all
Oh
that
no,
stuff.
I seem to have been injured.
Yeah, so they so in Half-Life 2, you know that the scientists like they basically upgraded those generic scientists to be actual people.
Yeah.
So the ones that die over the course of time in Half-Life 1, they can't die anymore. Like according to the story, because like several of the generic characters die in Half-Life 1. So what they
Yeah.
did was they made new, unique scientists that die,
Oh,
so
that's
that
clever.
the unique ones can move on in the
Yeah,
story
so
to
that
Half-Life
Barney
2.
gets to live in Half-Life 2.
Exactly. But Barney
He's
moves
a
on to
security
Half-Life
guard, but
2.
yeah.
Yeah. But Dr. Kleiner is a major character, and
Okay, yeah.
Dr. Vance is a major character in both of these games, to the point where that his daughter is like your main companion.
Yeah. Dr.
So
Kleiner was the guy with the head
the
crab
bald head.
pet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Bald head.
Lamar. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So those characters have to move on. You meet Eli Vance. They actually name Eli Vance in Black Mesa,
Oh,
which
that's
is
pretty
really
crazy.
neat. But yeah. They re-recorded dialogue. It sounds great. The music's just as good as it ever was, and they even added stuff. And the big thing is that the major criticism of Half-Life at the time was that the last section was very disappointing.
Yeah,
It was
there's
called
like
Zen.
there's
Yeah,
just it's kind of like a new worlds to explore, but not really. You don't get to walk very far
it's
before
very
there's the
linear
boss you
too.
need to fight, and the boss itself was kind of
Meh.
jank at the time. And
Yeah, yeah,
then the final boss is like, oh, okay, I guess I
yeah,
got
yeah.
him.
Yeah, it was a fun battle, but like,
It was
I think
interesting
every
aesthetic, and you're like, oh man, everything's changed. But then like the game's over in another like 40 minutes.
so they made Zen like a fully developed new section of the
Yeah,
game.
that's amazing. That's probably
Yeah,
the part I'm most interested in because
yeah.
Zen was honestly kind of my least favorite part of the original game, just because I get used to how the game plays, and now there's just a new world that doesn't. It looks like it has potential, but there's nothing really in
Yeah,
it.
doesn't take advantage of it. It's the most lackluster part of the game for sure, and they improved it like so much. It's a worthy part of the game now. They've basically just added that in the last like 2 years. That was the part that people were really hoping would be really good, and it was.
Yeah, and this
So
isn't like to just go back to what you said. I mean, you already talked about how they made new scientist characters and stuff, so that would be more of a remake aspect of it. But even so, just to reiterate, this is not just a remaster of the original game. Like Zen is new level
new
design. Like
content,
it's
new
entirely
content.
different.
It might as well be an entirely like new part of the game, and it's long.
That's
It's not a short
crazy.
part of the game. It's almost like a third of the game, I think, at
That
this point.
what?
It might. I don't
Holy
think it's a
that's
third, but
insane.
it's a big section of the
That would
game.
mean Zen is fucking gigantic considering
It
how
is.
long Half-Life 1 is.
If I showed you the new map versus the old map, they had like a comparison.
Oh
They were
god.
like, "This is why this has been taking so long." And they,
Is
they
it like that one scene in The Force Awakens? I like The Force Awakens, but this one scene was fucking stupid where they're like, this is the Death Star, and they have a hologram of it. This is Starkiller Base. Like it's like 5 times bigger. Like shut
well,
the fuck up.
if you look at the new one, especially, not only is it bigger, but it's a lot more complex.
Sure.
So it's really good.
And I think you
And
told me a while back. I forgot the name of that spider boss, but they like redesigned the fight
completely revamped it. Yeah,
because that
completely
fight
revamped
was
it.
pretty weak because it was kind of a puzzle boss fight. You had to know like what to
Shoot its
do.
weak point. Yeah.
Yeah, but even so, you're like, am I doing it right? And then you just die. You're like, what?
But yeah, I don't want to get into much more because we have a Half-Life series episode
Yes.
coming up later on the week just to kind of celebrate this. But this is a huge accomplishment for a fan team to get officially sanctioned, essentially allowed to sell this and allowed to perform this, and it keep in mind also that it's running off of the source engine as well.
That's
So
ridiculous.
it's not a brand new tech game. This is running off of old technology, but it still looks beautiful. So
You know
keep
what
in
this
mind.
kind of reminds me of, actually?
What's that?
Not exactly the same results because they ended up making a different game, but the people, like the fan group that was originally working on remaking Resident Evil 2, but
Oh yeah.
using Dark Side Chronicles for the Wii's assets, because
Oh, okay.
that's
Yeah.
I mean that's a first person game, but like you have
HD
modern
assets.
character. Well, not really HD, but like you have.
Well, for the PS3
Yeah,
version, sure.
it's not fucking polygons, but then eventually Capcom, like again, like Valve gave this team the blessing, and they're using the same source engine. Capcom did not give this team their blessing, but they like took the team on in an official capacity, and then they helped make a new game. So it's kind of similar.
Yeah, that's actually been a long-standing Valve hallmark is that they
Yeah,
kind of reward fan ingenuity.
yeah,
They have taken on modders on an official capacity for a long time. I mean, Team Fortress Classic,
yeah.
Gearbox Software, the entirety of Gearbox Software was a fan community for Half-Life.
That's freaking
Um,
crazy.
yeah, like Randy Pitchard, was a fan modder
Yeah.
for Half-Life before they sold his stuff. I mean, he was they made Opposing Force, which is an
Oh,
official
okay.
the official one of the first official expansion for
Yeah,
Half-Life.
and
Um,
I'm also kind of thinking of Sega taking on Chris Whitehead for that for the mod he was
Yeah,
doing for Sonic CD.
yeah, Sonic 2 and Sonic CD.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, um, Valve kind of is that way to begin with. I mean, Valve was started off as like Gabe Newell started off as he was the person who helped port Doom to Windows. That's how
Okay.
he got famous. And then, like Valve started as, I think Half-Life started as a mod to Quake 2. So
Oh,
it
jeez.
runs off a modified Quake 2 engine. So, um, yeah, this is a big deal. This is a really cool thing, and they didn't just remake the single player game; they they remade all of the multiplayer content. So like, if
Jesus.
you want to play like Half-Life multiplayer, like back in the day, it is there and
Wow.
completely remade and redone. So it's a full remake. Really, really cool stuff. I'm super jazzed. I mean, I got in on the ground floor. You could get it a lot. I think for $15 you could get the early access back in the day, and now it's $20. But it's completely worth the $20. It will be on sale, I'm sure, in the future as well. But $20 is well worth your time. Plus, this probably wasn't a big thought in a lot of people's minds here, but the original Half-Life wasn't compatible with controllers. It
Oh,
was never
okay.
made. It wasn't made during the era in which the Xbox controller was ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Um, so this is another thing. Like you could play Black Mesa with a controller, no problem.
Very
So
nice.
and
Very
and it
nice.
feels good. So we'll move on from here. But I was just super excited. I wanted to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And Wonderful 101 remastered Kickstarter ends completely successful.
Yeah, like destroyed its stretch goals.
Yeah, so it ended with a over it's about 220 million.
That's freaking crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to me because people are so hyped about this, but like I really wonder how many of them had Wonderful 101 on the Wii U because
None of them.
that would involve owning a Wii U, and Wonderful 101 was not exactly all over store shelves.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
a little hard to find. It didn't get to like rare game status, but it was one of those like not guaranteed to find it if you go shopping.
So it blew past all of its original Kickstarter goals. So all of the content that they had proposed got funded,
Mm-hmm.
as well as orchestral recordings of two of the songs re-recorded with a full orchestra, not just like
Nice.
video gamey. So that was the last one that they had beaten, they had blown through. So really cool stuff, and we already have a release date, and it's not far off. Which is even really cool.
Yeah, pre-orders are already up for PS4 and Switch versions.
Yeah, I wish I had gotten in on the Kickstarter because I kind of want the official the Kickstarter cover, but that's okay.
I'm not as into that. Like I'll pick it up at the store.
Yeah, I'll pre-order it. I think this will be great. I should have done this one though. I feel bad that
You should have
I
put in
didn't get in
$100 to
on
get blocked by Kamiya on Twitter.
it. I could get that for free.
Well, that's the funny thing. Anybody can easily get that for free. Just ask him like when Bayonetta 3 is coming out. Like blocked, you fucking idiot. It's
Or just
gone.
ask him to block you, and he will.
That's true. Yeah.
But he's blocked his own company.
I don't know if he actually
As
did,
of
but that was
recently.
really funny.
Yeah, he was falling asleep like after
Yeah, he was
like
at
a
PAX
long
East.
day of work, and probably travel and all that stuff, and he fell asleep at a restaurant with his like team,
Yeah, and one of
and
them was
they
like quietly
putting
trying to
shit on
balance
his
like a
face.
paper cup on his head. Yeah, and he's just like, and they tweeted it out. He's just like blocked, so, like he blocks fucking Platinum Games. It's hilarious.
I was pretty happy about that,
It was
but
very funny.
uh, uh, Platinum deserves this shit. I mean, Platinum is a really cool company. They
They
make
deserve to
really
get blocked
good
by
stuff.
Kamiya.
They do, but yeah,
Everybody does. We are not worthy of his
we aren't worthy.
magnificence.
But no, I'm super excited. Really cool stuff. Then I kind of just wanted to mention this because this is another successful Kickstarter thing that happened. But Bloodstained, they have announced a couple things that are going on. They actually are still pledging to continue to improve the Switch version, even
Yeah,
after
that's a
they've
lot of effort.
done improvement, like significant improvements already, to the point where it's a viable version of the game. It's not an
Yeah.
issue anymore. But they were like, no, we really want to make it right, so we're going to continue to work on that.
Well, that's the thing. This isn't like, working at Konami. We need another Castlevania game. Like, they pitched this. Like, this is a passion project. Like you really have that extra impetus for that reason alone to like really make it right.
I think Iga was also very happy with the sales of the game,
Oh, people
and
flipped out about this thing.
it was my game of the year for last year.
Yeah.
I know that it sounds funny to have a simpler game be your game of the year.
Well, dude, I mean, I chose fucking 428 for my
Yeah.
2018 game of the year. It's like it's pictures.
Yeah, but this was honestly the thing that I loved the most. It delivered on everything and more for me. Like, I love Metroidvanias, especially, the Castlevania Metroidvanias, and Bloodstained was everything that I wanted out of a Symphony of the Night sequel.
Yeah.
That we never got a fully console Metroidvania after Symphony of the Night. It was always a handheld game, and the handheld games are fantastic. I really love the Game Boy Advance games and the DS games, but
I never thought about that. That's a good point.
We never got a console
Because like the PS2 games were not Metroidvanias,
No.
and the PS3 was like, what was that like? Like God of War kind of Castlevania?
Yeah,
sort of?
and but that wasn't. That's I consider that an offshoot because it wasn't an Igavania.
Yeah, that was a Kojima game.
Well, actually, it was Steamforged. It was and Kojima like produced it.
Oh,
But,
there we go. Okay.
He it was made by Steamforged over in Spain.
And weirdly, like aspects of Shadow of the Colossus showed up in
Yeah.
that game. Like what?
Actually, I don't like the hate that all those games get because they're pretty good.
It's Zelda 2. Like
Yeah.
This is what I think a Castlevania game should be, and this game, despite being good, is not like what I thought it would be. Therefore, it's bad.
Yeah, no, that's not accurate. They're actually pretty good. But Bloodstained is what I wanted out of a successor to Symphony of the Night, and it was excellent. And I got everything I wanted out of it. It had secret areas. It had a lot of challenging optional battles if you wanted them. It had a great crafting system, great quests, a lot of humor.
Well, what I'm pretty excited about is that your costume pieces actually change. Because in actual Symphony of the Night, you got 1,000 pieces of like costumes and armor and stuff, but like you couldn't see any of them.
It was just color changing. Like there's some color changing, but I absolutely adored this game. I thought it was a ton of fun. I played it for a long. I played the shit out of it. There's more content on the way. But speaking of, they came out and said that it was infeasible to do one of their stretch goals, and I'm okay with it. I'm a Kickstarter backer for this game, and
Yeah, same.
one of their stretch goals was to do a roguelike mode. I don't
That
think
would be
they
a pain in the ass.
I don't think they realize how difficult it is to make a good roguelike.
Well, the thing with that is you would have to, like, for a Castlevania style game, what I'm picturing is Rogue Legacy. But the thing with roguelikes though is that rooms, or even Bloodborne, like the Chalice dungeons, rooms are intentionally generic in order to be able to make this work. You can't really talk about super clever map and level design and stuff like that, because with a roguelike it has to be a roll of the dice. And so like, here's a room with guys in it. Like it's an entirely different kind of design.
I think they recognize that with weapon balance and like unlockables and progress of a roguelike, you would need to make a whole game that.
Yeah.
It's not easy to make something like Enter the Gungeon or Binding of Isaac. They're both insanely complicated games.
Or if you want to do like an extra mode, like the Bloodborne Chalice dungeons, it would just be like, here's a cool prize you got for making it to the
Yeah.
end. Like, it would just, okay.
They wanted to do something fully fledged, so instead they said, oh, they were going to do a randomizer, which it has a similar idea.
Yeah,
They're
that's
gonna,
something. Yeah.
yeah, but I think if they wanted to do a roguelike, they'll do a spin-off game, because I think that would take a lot of resources for them to make. So I'm okay with it. I
Maybe they should
really am.
collaborate with Sting and make Baroque 2.
uh, um,
The world
yeah.
was not ready for Baroque. Like, it seriously wasn't, and frankly still isn't. I beat the game and I'm not ready for it.
But yeah, I think it's okay. It's one of those things. I got what I wanted out of that experience. Plus, they're adding more stuff still. They're adding new playable characters and all that stuff. So, moving on from that, just some updates on some other stuff we talked about. The Analogue NT Mini is now sold out. The version
that
2.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I kind of am.
It. I am surprised that it sold out as quickly as it did. It was a week.
Like, I mean, I do get, like, oh, I didn't know what Analog was when the NT Mini came out, and I lost my chance. Now I have another chance, but, like, again, that price point.
Price point is extremely high. It's $500.
I mean, to be fair, the people who are buying it might be doing it specifically for the stuff that I don't want, like the TV, like the video out for, like, their CRTs or something.
Exactly. I with all of my like good reasons to not buy it, I still kind of wanted it. It's one of those
Same
things.
with me, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, it would be cool to say that I had it, but, like, I'm not paying that for it.
I also believe wholeheartedly that there will be a successor that will maybe not be as fully featured on its own, but will eventually have all the capabilities.
Give me an NT Mini Lite or something. That's just what the
Yeah.
other consoles are, like HDMI out upscales. Like, that's all I want.
And you can use the digital to analog converter that they have for the other systems on it.
Yeah, like
that would be
that's all I
perfect.
want. That,
Yeah.
and maybe as a novelty, the controller microphone thing, just because nothing else does that.
Exactly. So, I kind of like, it was one of those like, it's sold out. Like I still had like this aura of disappointment, even though I wasn't going to buy it anyway.
Well, the thing is, part of that definitely exists, but at the same time, there's also this sense of finality where you're
Yeah.
like, well, now I don't have to think about buying anymore because
Exactly.
I can't.
Exactly. It stopped me from buying
Like,
it too.
I've done that. I've done that with some Kickstarter stretch goals. Like, if there's like a really high goal with a limited number of slots, I'm like, maybe someone else will get the goal and then I won't.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
like wait it out.
Exactly. So thankfully, but it's still really cool. And also we have the Analog Pocket to look forward to, and that is going to be a much bigger deal. So
Well, yeah, that's
I'm
doing
definitely looking
something
forward to
that
that.
has not already been done.
Yeah, so that's all the Game Boy platforms plus Neo Geo Pocket Color and
Yeah, and the
Game
fucking
Gear
links. Like,
and
what?
Game Gear and Links.
Yeah, and the Game
And
Gear.
the possibility of Wonder Swan down the line.
I can't wait to play that Shawniki RPG.
But yeah, I especially want it for the Neo Geo stuff. Hopefully, it'll have extra features and all kinds of
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm interested in the Neo Geo and the links just because, like, I don't actually have a passion for either of those two things. It's just that this is the only way I could record that stuff, and that's, like, fascinating to me. Like,
I have a feeling you would actually really like the Neo Geo stuff once.
no,
once
I
you have the
probably would. I
ability.
just don't know anything about
Yeah.
it. Like, it's like basically the entire Game Boy library, like all of the Game Boys. I never
Yes.
had a Game Boy growing up. My first handheld system was a 3DS XL, a new 3DS XL. So, like, I'm kind of discovering all these games that are common knowledge to everybody else.
Yep. So, really cool stuff. But it's one of those deals. But thankfully, their other stuff is for sale. Like you could buy the other ones in perpetuity. But I think they just wanted to go out with a bang on this particular model.
Yeah.
They are famously not very communicative. They're kind of keeping things under wraps. So I'm sure they don't want to disappoint people who spent a lot of money on this with a new product down the line, which will probably be a few years. Because they have the Analog Pocket is coming out later this year as well, and they need to work on the dock for it as well. So
Yeah, that is
that's a separate
the thing
release.
that I care about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. And it will also have a fan core for people to program their own FPGA cores into that. Um, it that's even a cooler possibility. Like, what if you could have a like super accurate simulations of at least Nintendo games, NES
Yeah.
games, right off, right in the palm of your hand. That's really, really cool with extra features and all that. So, moving on from that, this is a big deal too. This is, I think, the biggest single item sold ever in terms of video games. So this the Nintendo PlayStation that had been up for sale has completely sold to the founder of Pets.com, which is kind of funny.
Of course. Yeah.
For $360,000. So this is, I think, the most expensive single item to ever be sold in terms of video games. So really cool stuff. He also said that he was planning on founding a video game museum with this as its centerpiece. So it is not going to a private collection.
Okay.
So that's a good thing. I think part of what the seller wanted to do was give it to somebody who would do good with it.
Yeah.
And that is doing good. Making this a part of publicly accessible history is very important. So this is really neat, really cool stuff. Moving on from that, also, like, as far as I know, this guy isn't a jerk. Like, there's just, like, the guy who founded Oculus was bidding on it, and that nobody likes that guy. So, moving on from this, I thought this was interesting news, especially for you. A new Amnesia game, Rebirth, was announced for autumn 2020.
Yeah, and what makes people excited about this is that it's made by, I believe it's called Frictional, the original makers of Amnesia, because the second Amnesia game, Machine for Pigs, was made by a different studio.
It was like the Dear Esther devs, wasn't it?
It might have been, I think so. And like, people thought it was like okay, like not, like, it's all right. It didn't have the hype of the original Amnesia, so people are excited that it's kind of going back to form, probably.
Yeah, and that's probably why it's called Rebirth as well.
Yeah, it's a little on the nose.
Yeah, exactly. But that's really cool stuff. Anytime a cool horror game gets announced, Lotus and I are usually very stoked about it, especially if it's something, part of our wheelhouse, which Amnesia definitely is.
Yeah.
And just to reiterate, that series is based off of like no combat and avoidance, right? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah. You can't fight anything in Amnesia. It's like, some people were a little turned off by it for that reason, because it was they called it like a run and hide simulator.
Yeah, isn't it a successor to the Penumbra trilogy?
Yeah. In the original Penumbra, you could fight back, but the combat sucked. And then in the sequel, there was no fighting. You just had to avoid as well. But people didn't really know Penumbra quite as well back then. Maybe you've heard of it, but Amnesia really took off.
It was a free game for a long time. I remember. It was
I
like,
actually don't remember that. I bought the trilogy at Best Buy.
No, this was way before that. It was one of those games that was passed around during the time of like Cave Story. Like it goes back that far. Penumbra has been around. It was just like it was part of the indie game scene before indie games became a viable section of the market.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so Amnesia was kind of like a higher quality version of those games, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Had bigger budgets, obviously.
Everybody loves that one underwater monster that you never get to see.
Yeah. That's really tense, that stuff. Moving on from this, you had a pretty significant announcement here.
Oh yeah, Mortal Kombat 11, has been slowly releasing characters over time, and some of them are pretty wild, like the Terminator, stuff like that. But people knew this was coming, but now it's like really coming. Like the
Joker
trailer,
too.
I'm sorry? Yeah, the Joker. So now the trailer for Spawn just launched. So, I mean, we knew Spawn was coming, but now there's a trailer, and you can see some of his moves, and it's just pretty cool to see Spawn in a Mortal Kombat game, because he was in Soul Calibur 2.
I was just going to say, you know what this means. Part of the same universe as Soul Calibur 2.
Yeah, obviously. Like, Soul Calibur is a freaking great game, but Spawn is one of those gritty, like, bunch of guns and hell demons and
you
badass.
can also do anything you want to him. You could chop his head off and nobody like that's fine. That fits.
Yeah, so like Soul Calibur, you're like, oh, I get to see Spawn fight and play as him. It's awesome. But he does fit better in the Mortal Kombat universe because he's just like this brutal, violent guy with like horrible hook chains. Like
he's been vivisected
like,
and cut up and all kinds of things in the comics. So because he's a demon. So
and he's friends with John Leguizamo.
Not really friends.
Yeah, not really. He actually kind of doesn't like him.
Yeah,
he's intentionally annoying all the time.
Yeah, well, he is the agent of hell that's keeping him in line.
Yeah. Also kicks his ass a few times.
Oh yeah. So MK11 just gets better. This is definitely part of. This is one of those like games as a service games that just like gets better over time. MK11 just keeps on delivering, so that it's really cool. I mean, this is one of the few games that I play with my fiance, and she absolutely loves it. It's kind of funny, like she goes after the most
that's the one.
the most violent game of all time. I'm comfortable in saying that Mortal Kombat 11 is the most violent game of all time. I can't think of anything that comes close. Even
there are individual moments in some games that are pretty hard to watch, but Mortal Kombat is like consistent.
MK10 and now MK11, which is even worse.
Yeah, MK10 got disgusting, and MK11 I think is I haven't played
even
it,
more
but
disgusting.
I believe it,
yeah,
escalates.
I maybe what's it? A Manhunt 2 might be the only thing that I would say might be in contention.
Well, that was like a PS2 and Wii game, so it's not going to be as realistic as Mortal Kombat 11's. Like
Mortal Kombat 11's very.
I mean,
realistic.
Mortal Kombat games are freaking cartoons, but I mean realistic in terms of like HD graphics and stuff. But yeah, the Manhunt kills could be pretty uncomfortable, and God of War had some brutal deaths as well.
But I think MK11, it takes the cake. But this and Crash Team Racing are the games that we play together. And
Jesus Christ! I thought you were gonna say Crash Team Racing is like the other violent contender.
No,
I was what?
No, these are the games we play together, and we just have a whole lot of fun. Even just trying the fatalities on each other is just always a blast.
And actually, you know what was really shocking for its time? Dying in various ways in Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
That game got surprisingly...
Especially the chainsaw guy.
The chainsaw guy and the Garrador. That game got surprised... Oh, no. The bugs. That death was disgusting. Like, that game got surprisingly
violent.
Yeah,
the Plagas.
No, like the flying insect things.
Oh, gotcha.
Because like every one of the game is a Plagas.
Gotcha. Well, moving on from that... this was just actually something kind of cool and kind of a throw out to our buddy Pyro, but this was a game that he and I used to play back in the day. But Plok, a game for the SNES, it was actually made by the devs that ended up making Claymates.
Yeah, that game. That
Clay Fighter.
Clay Fighter. That game was pretty
Claymates
clever.
and Clay Fighter. Yeah. So it's kind of like a Rayman. Actually, it's a character who has like floating appendages that aren't like physically attached to his body.
Yeah, you like shoot them.
Yeah,
and what's clever is you basically have 4 attacks. Like when you fire your arms, you lose your arms because they're hitting somebody else. When you fire your legs, you like get lower on the ground because you literally don't have a leg to stand on, and then they come back to you.
It's a really good platformer that is overlooked even today. A lot of people don't even really talk about it, even in retro circles. And it's actually a really fun game. But they are releasing the soundtrack on vinyl, which is kind of cool.
That's such a weird
April
thing 18th. To like focus on. Like remember Plok? Like I guess.
Yeah, but that's cool. I'm all for that. This is somebody's favorite game out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
going from that, I thought this was awesome news. Nippon Ichi NIS announced that Prinny 1 and 2 Exploded and Reloaded is announced for Switch 2020.
Yeah, those were like what, PSP games?
So yeah, I was actually just going to say these games were locked to the PSP and also by extension the Vita. And anytime a good game gets freed from an inconvenient platform, I'm all for it, especially like the Wii U, the PSP, and the Vita. Like anything, and anytime it's liberated to a much more accessible console like the Switch, I'm gonna be all for it. And these are full remakes too, so like they're going to have HD textures, uncompressed assets. They may even have like zoomed out camera and things like that because with the PSP it had like zoomed in because of the resolution kind of features. So these are spin-off games from the Disgaea series, if you're unaware, that have gameplay similar to the Ghosts and Goblins series or Ghouls and Ghosts series, and they're a lot of fun. They are actually really really good, and I believe the first one at least came out before Ultimate Ghouls and Ghosts, which was the PSP. Sequel of Ghosts and Goblins. So this is what people had to play back then, and it has a cool gimmick in that you have 99 lives to beat the game, but they're actual lives, like they're actually different Prinnies each time.
Well, yeah, because the gimmick with Prinnies in the Disgaea universe is that they're the little like gophers of any boss. They're just like the slaves of everybody, and if you ever throw them at somebody like in combat, they explode. They're basically living bombs. So that's probably where the name Exploded and Reloaded comes from, because when they die they explode. They're like disposable henchmen, and like they're some of the goofier characters in the game, but you kind of feel sorry for them for their existence. So playing as them is pretty amusing.
I think canonically they're supposed to be like souls of normal bad people.
The way the underworld works is you're in the body of a Prinny for a while. Like Prinnies aren't real creatures, that they are souls of other people who are wrapped up in these goofy penguin bodies until they've
like graduated
done
to
whatever
else.
Done some degree of penance, or like have become a badass enough henchman. I forgot what it was, but they could eventually get out of that crappy state they're in.
But it's cool to see. This was a good series. This was if you ask people, what were some of the best PSP exclusives, the Prinny games will come up. So this is really good. This also means that NIS has basically liberated almost all of their PSP exclusives. There's still a couple. ZHP. Zettai Hero Project is still on there, and there's a couple other of their series, but I think they got most of them. So this is really cool. I'm very happy about this. I'll definitely buy this one, eventually when the time comes. Moving on from that, a new Sega Ages games. Everybody always knows that how much I like the Sega Ages series, made by M2. There's some of the best re-releases, remasterings of old games. They're just so good, and I bought every single one of them. Like I munched them up. But new title added, which is called G-Loc Air Battle. Do you know anything about G-Loc?
No, I never heard of this.
Okay, so G-Loc is known as a spin-off to the Afterburner series.
Okay.
So the main gimmick with G-Loc is that instead of a third-person camera of the Afterburner, like you're behind you're behind the plane in that in the camera. This is like first person, like you're actually in the airplane while you're flying. So that's like the major gimmick, is it looks more realistic, like you're actually in a fighter plane, which is pretty cool. And the really cool arcade cabinet was like just amazing. It was like it was a moving cabinet that shook and moved all around and kind of like pivoted, so it felt like you were actually like flying one of these things
Well, did it feel
when you
like you
played that.
were? Did it feel like? Well, I'm just trying to imagine, like in Star Wars: A New Hope, when Luke's controlling the Millennium Falcon's like turret.
Oh yeah, no, it feels like doing that. It's really
Nice.
really neat.
I got
Um,
one. I got one.
it's more akin to um like riding on like a roller coaster or something like that. It's like
Okay.
it's an attraction for sure. And it's a lot of fun. It's never really gotten a really good port either. Like the ports back then were piss poor ports. You know, they didn't match up with the graphics or anything like that. And this is, you know, the full arcade experience. They're even adding like all kinds of things like ambient, like mechanical sounds, if you want that kind of thing to go along with
Nice.
it. So really cool stuff. I think they're adding motion controls too, like if you want to do that with the you know the Switch in handheld mode. I'm really looking forward to this, especially since this is a game that doesn't get a whole lot of love. I'm most excited when Sega Ages picks something that hasn't been ported a billion times. So I'm really excited about this one. Also, other M2 news. The Darius Cosmic Collection, which I've talked about a few times, has gotten an English language update, even for the Japanese version. So
Huh.
the whatever version you bought, like I bought this game way before it even had a digital release. It was a very odd release. They only released this physically for about like 6 months, and only in Japan. So like it was very unknown whether they were going to release this digitally or even in the United States or in Western territories at all. So they eventually did all that. But I was stuck with Japanese menus on my version, and it's not too bad because you know it's an arcade game, but there are so many different versions of these games included. I didn't know what the difference between them all was, because like their descriptions were in Japanese. So this is really nice. I got the update overnight one night, and they gave me all that stuff in English. So I know what I'm playing now, which is great. They also, along with that, announced that there will be a Darius Cosmic Collection 2 for Switch and PS4. Now, I know this will be coming to the West, because why wouldn't it be? So I'm really happy about that. I won't have to buy like a Japanese version ahead of time. And people have been kind of speculating, you know, what's going to be on it because they got almost every game in the series. The only remaining ones were one big title, which is Darius, which is the game that came out for PS1, and it was on one of the Taito collections as well.
Yeah, it
It
was on the
had,
Taito Collection too, because I remember this because I saw you play it on PS2.
yeah, it's one of the best games in the
Yeah,
series.
that
It
was the
has.
craziest one where you have like the big laser beam and the enemy
Mhm.
has it too, and you like if you press the buttons right, then it like grows as like a Dragon Ball Z beam fight.
Yeah, you kind of feed off of the enemy's beam and shoot it back at them. So it's really, really a lot of fun, and that was the game where they introduced that mechanic. So they that is a big title and should have an arcade perfect release. So I'm really glad that this is going to be out there. And people are wondering what else because we have Darius Burst is the only other major game in the series, and that is already available for PS4 and for PC. Definitely get the PC version if you can, because like Darius Burst on PC is awesome. Like you can even do like a dual monitor mode with it if you have dual monitors like next to each other. It's a lot of fun. But I think that version is called Darius Burst Chronicle Survivors, I believe, is the full title. Yeah, Chronicle Saviors. It's a really great game, and it uses that like laser mechanic that we were talking about as
hmm
well. However, the Switch does not have this game, so it could be that they are just including that as well. But there are other versions of Darius Burst before this version that have less features, that kind of thing. So maybe they'll include all of those. There was a version of Darius Burst for the PSP that wasn't as fully featured as Chronicle Saviors. So they may include that. But my thinking is that they will. Taito will include a bunch of Taito shmups that fit kind of the theme of Darius, or like time period that Darius was released, because there are a lot of non like Space Invaders Taito games that don't get a whole lot of love that are shmups. One of them is called Gun. I forget what that one's called, but there is a Taito game with gun in its title. I forget as of right now, right off the top of my head, what it's called. But it was a lot of fun. It was like a steampunk aesthetic,
Okay.
and also had like
Gun Frontier.
Gun Frontier. Yeah, that's it. It had a lot of a really neat aesthetic and had beautiful graphics. Has like a Western steampunk kind of feel, like almost like
Sure.
you're playing Wild Wild West.
My favorite movie.
But no, like it's a vertical shmup and it's really good and doesn't get a whole lot of love. So I think
there a
that'll
giant
be in
robot
there.
Spider?
God, I hope. Sand. Like sand. But anyway. Anyway, moving on from that. Kevin Kline, why were you in that?
How long does it take a magnet to lose its power? About 400 years.
Asshole! Anyway. God, I love that movie. I'm not
The
talking
movie's
about...
dumb as hell, but I enjoy it.
I'm not... I'm talking about A Fish Called Wanda now. But anyway.
I'm still talking about Wild Wild West, baby.
But the other game that will... I know for... I have like 80% certainty that this game will be included. It's called Metal Black. Metal Black is a horizontal shmup made by Taito that actually was the first game that had that laser mechanic that we were talking about. They took that mechanic from that game and put it in G Darius. So I think Metal Black a lot of times gets lumped in with the Darius series because it's except for the visual themes and stuff, it fits right in.
Sure.
So especially considering that like its mechanics informed how the series plays and is known by for now on. So I think Metal Black will definitely be on that, and I think Metal Black, its code name while being developed was Gun Frontier 2.
Huh.
So I think that's why I think Gun Frontier has a good chance of being on there. So I'm going to go ahead and say that those are my guesses because they need to have some amount of content to have another collection. You know what I mean? And just having one game as well as some like lesser versions of a game that's already out isn't going to cut it. So G Darius alone is worth purchasing something like this, so I'm going to be perfectly fine with that because G Darius might be like either the best game in the series or the second best game in the series, depending on whether you're comparing it to Chronicle Saviors. Darius Gaiden is already out on the current collection, and Darius Gaiden is fantastic. That's one of the best games of the series as well. So looking forward to whatever it is that it ends up being. Moving on from that, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is out for mobile. If you want to play, one of the best 2D games of all time on a touchscreen, go ahead. I will not. I have a lot of other great ways to play it. The PS4 version of Symphony of the Night is the best. It is what I want out of that, so I have no need for that. This is exciting news, though. Ducktales Remastered is returning to all of its digital storefronts.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Digital games, are especially vulnerable to this kind of blackout where either they won't be sold ever again or may not be for a long time. and this was taken off because of whatever deal Capcom had with Disney at the time. But Capcom and Disney have a really good relationship even still.
Well, yeah, I
So
mean, they were just. Oh wait, no, I forgot if it was Capcom. No, never mind. I'm sorry. I was about to say Lion King and Aladdin, but that was Virgin, wasn't it?
that was Virgin.
Yeah.
Virgin made Aladdin and Lion King, and Jungle Book, which oddly wasn't included in that collection. I don't know why. But yeah, Ducktales Remastered was a really fun remastering. It was really good. It also has the final performance of Alan Young as Scrooge
Yeah, the
McDuck,
original Scrooge McDuck voice. Yeah.
and also Wilbur from Mr. Ed.
Wow.
But yeah, that's how old he was.
Jeez.
He was Wilbur, like the human
Wow.
from Mr. Ed, the black and white TV show.
That's crazy.
But yeah, it's one of those, like, if you go back and you watch Mr. Ed and you listen for it, you're like, oh my god, that is Uncle Scrooge.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's just not doing, a
Scottish accent.
Scottish accent, exactly. Bless me, bagpipes. He was not the first person to do the voice of Uncle Scrooge, but he is the iconic person.
Okay.
So his voice was used, of course, in the cartoon show for DuckTales and all that stuff. So. I think he's like the second person to do the voice of Scrooge McDuck, and he was only ever like showed up in like 2 or 3 things before he started doing the voice. So this is the one everybody knows for. So good game, great that it's back out. It is not on anything new. I should reiterate that. It is
Yeah,
on.
it's still like PS3.
Yeah, like, so it's returning to the Wii U storefront, for instance.
Oh, sweet.
But not the Switch, notably. So, yeah, that's the only problem. Maybe they reworked a deal where they could get Disney Afternoon Collection on the Switch too, which is an odd exclusion for sure. I think Disney Afternoon Collection had just released when the Switch had just come out, so it was probably not part of the deal. So. Hopefully, Capcom's renewing a deal with Disney to get more stuff out there as well as this game. But this is a game that a lot of people were kind of clamoring for to be available again, so it's good. Also, Halo Anniversary is out on Steam now. This is the remake of the first Halo, which is an excellent remake. It is part of the Master Chief Collection, so if you had purchased that, now this part of that will be available. I think only ODST had been available previously, or Reach. Only one game was available. I think only Reach was available, I think. So Halo 1 is now available on Steam. So that's really cool, because Halo 1 is like a very formative game in how people, like console players, played first-person shooters competitively. It was not online when the original one released. However, it was the foundation of Halo 2, which was like the first major console first-person shooter to have like a competitive scene, and that was widely played. I mean, there was Quake 3 on the Dreamcast before that, so don't at me on that. But
The Dreamcast wasn't exactly doing gangbusters, though.
exactly. It was a popular system, but for a very short time, and only in America.
Yeah.
It was not popular in Japan, so that's why it died. But Halo Anniversary, like a lot of people, will be returning to that to have a lot of fun in the original Halo, especially the multiplayer. Plus, I like the campaign quite a bit, so that's cool. There's also the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo out right now. There are some people that love it, some people hate it. It's one of those things. I don't think you're ever
seen
gonna
people just flip out about how great it is. The complaints I've seen are like the not turn-based system, because they thought, like, are they going to bring that back or what? But at the same time, we've already had this discussion, but like, how many of you really want that back for like a game that looks and plays like this?
I'm okay with any changes. I just want it to look good and all that kind of stuff. The major thing that they're complaining about right now is something that wouldn't have shown up in this, but apparently Red 13 is no longer a playable character in the whole game.
Whoa.
Yeah, he's no longer a playable character.
But why though?
Yeah, they said that he was a late addition to your party, and he's going to be a guest fighter, meaning he'll fight, but you don't have any control over him. He just kind of helps you. That kind of stinks, considering that Red 13 actually
he's a popular character.
He not only is he a popular character and has a good story arc, he also has the last scene of the game.
Yeah, that is bizarre.
But there's room for them to change that decision, so who knows. But I will be playing this game once it's fully out. I'm not gonna play each episode or whatever. I'm gonna wait for the whole thing.
You're gonna play this game in 2030?
That's okay. I'm not going to play the game piecemeal.
I am not going to play the game at all. I just never cared about Final Fantasy VII.
It's cool. It was a good game, and a formative game. So I played it, and it's one of the few RPGs from that time period that I actually beat all the way.
The funny thing is, the game that I have more nostalgia for, because I watched our friend Perry play, was FF8. But FF7's the better game. But I just saw a lot more of FF8.
FF8 is also iconic, beautiful.
FF8 looks cool. The thing is, I didn't even see FF7 for a very long time outside of the FMV scenes and commercials. So I looked at FF8, and then I looked at FF7's gameplay graphics. I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, because FF8 has realistic looking characters, and I know are they going for an anime look? But FF7's just walk around the map. Character models looked fucking awful. Their battle characters look pretty cool actually, but the overworld, really, the Lego characters.
I would probably say that FF8 is in contention for one of the best looking PlayStation 1 games. It's a really good looking PlayStation.
Considering
1
how huge it is, the fact that you look that good when you're just walking around, is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of funny jokes about
you're the
being
best looking guy here.
But that was a
what do you want? This is
scene.
You're playing in a tiny CRT TV. What do you want?
Yeah, exactly.
But the main thing I saw people complaining about Final Fantasy VIII was the leveling mechanics, because the levels don't.
Oh, the battle
really
system
matter.
Sucks. I hate the battle system in 8.
The drawing and the junctioning. I
hate it.
And also just how baffling the end game plot is with the time compression.
Oh, it has one of the worst stories in Final Fantasy history.
It's actually a pretty good story, but nobody understands it. I was watching the FF8 GDQ speedrun, piecemeal, because it's a 9-hour speedrun. But when they explained what you're actually doing at the end of the game, it actually sounds pretty great. It's just the game doesn't convey that really well, and there was some jank translation in the game anyway, so it's extremely confusing.
It was one of those growing pains things.
Yeah, and the ending FMV scene, which is a good 10 minutes long, and it's gorgeous, but if you weren't really following the story, then it is baffling. You're what is happening?
Yeah, no,
so that kind of left a bad taste in people's mouths. But if you actually know what the plot is, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, moving on from that, this was just kind of funny. The Steam version of Death Stranding will have Half-Life content, and it's releasing on June 2nd, 2020. So they have this picture going around with Norman Reedus with a head crab on him. That is real. I thought it was some people had made that in response to the announcement. But no, that was real.
That's great.
I'm actually very happy about this. Kojima never change, please. He totally gets that video games are a goofy medium, so why not just make it goofy as fuck? And especially in recent years, I'm gonna put in as many advertisements that don't belong here as possible, like Monster energy drink for no fucking reason in the apocalypse, AMC TV shows emblazoned on the shower.
That's really weird.
It's so funny. I love it. But yeah, it's kind of a shameless thing, but it's so shameless. It goes right back around to being
Yeah, yeah.
great. But this is really cool. I mean, anytime that Half-Life can be in stuff, I'm all for it. Plus extra content in an already accomplished game, so really cool stuff. There's also this was a big surprise. The Behemoth makers of Castle Crashers and what's Battle Block Theater?
Yes.
And Pyre is the other one, right? Or is it no Pit People?
No, yeah,
Pip,
no.
Pip,
Pyre is the people who made Transistor and
yeah,
Bastion.
it's Pip People is the more recent game that they have. Are making a new Alien Hominid game, which is how they started. So I am really excited for that. It is a Switch game, and it looks like it's going to be a party game. So the original Alien Hominid started off as a Newgrounds game.
Yeah.
And
eventually hit PS2.
It hit PS2, GameCube, and GameCube in the United States. And
you just said PS2, GameCube, and GameCube.
No, because it did come to Xbox, the original Xbox, but only in Europe.
Okay.
So yeah. So it was a really great game. I really enjoyed that game back in the day. It plays like Metal Slug. And then they only made Alien Hominid HD for Xbox 360 as part of the the Xbox Live Arcade. But it only ever came to Xbox 360. It never came to PC. So the only playable way, the only way to play it right now is actually on an Xbox One. But this is really good. They are coming out with a new game, and it's part of one of their established series. It looks like it's a lot of fun too. You should definitely check out the trailer. I thought this was pretty interesting. Yakuza 0 and Kiwami for PC is getting an upgrade to the to the deluxe editions for the PC version. So this is coming with a digital manga for both games. Exclusive wallpapers and avatars are coming free for PC. So that's pretty cool. Moving on from that, Data West, which is not Data East, it is a different company.
Well, that's the thing that's weird, is that Data East's counterpart was Trade West, not Data West. So this is really something else.
They were popular in Japan for making certain games for the PC-88, FM Towns, and the PC Engine. And a lot of games that I don't know about in particular. A lot of their games were Japan only, but they later actually one of the people, one of the key people from Data West, Ishii Jiro, went on to make 428 Shibuya Scramble.
Oh, very nice.
So yeah, there are a lot of visual novels and things that they made, but what I know them for is they made two shmups for the PC Engine that were on the PC Engine CD called Ray Zamber 2 and 3. It was kind of like a Thunder Force series, kind of thing where like the first game was like for an old computer or whatever. But I really love Ray Zamber 2 and 3, especially 3. So they have announced that they are going to be porting their old games to current systems, probably more than likely the Switch, which is where the home for this kind of stuff is, and also making sequels to their old games. So this is an old company that it has some obscurity. So this is a great thing because a lot of their classics will be more accessible now, so that I'm all for that. You also have like companies like that like the makers of Tulip are re-releasing Moon after all these years.
Yeah, it's like
good
okay.
stuff. yeah, really cool stuff. Just a couple little things. Murder by Numbers was released on Switch. I wanted to.
That's actually quite cool.
I can't wait to play this, but it is Picross mixed with Ace Attorney like gameplay.
Yeah, it makes me think of Cadence of Hyrule, like Crypt of the Necrodancer and Zelda. What, like Picross and Ace Attorney? Okay.
It's not official Ace Attorney, but it might as well be. It's like one of those kinds of things. It's Ace Attorney-like gameplay, I should say. It's not the same characters or anything, but it's
Okay.
still really cool. Moving on from that, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX is on Switch. That is a fan favorite.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
Roguelike. Oh, this is pretty cool too. Creator of the GBA consolizer, the guy who basically made it so that you could use a Super Nintendo controller with your GBA, and also output it with HD in HD with HDMI. His name is Woozle64, along with a guy named Greg Collins, are working on a Neo Geo Pocket Color consolizer for the official system. I probably won't get in on this because I'll have the FPGA thing coming out pretty soon with the Pocket, at the NT Mini, or the NT Pocket, but the Analogue Pocket, I should say. But it's still really cool, especially if you really want to use a controller and use the original system. Castlevania Netflix series entered into its season 3 just recently. That's really cool. I need to catch up. I haven't watched season 2 yet. Just some TV stuff here. Fargo season 4, which I'm super amped up for, is coming in April 19th. That is set in the 20s, so I'm super stoked about that. It's going to be some cool stuff. Also, Craig Mazin, the creator of HBO's really successful series Chernobyl, has been signed to adapt Last of Us for HBO, which is really, really cool. That means the series will most likely be really good. And Last of Us deserves it. It's a good series.
Yeah.
I haven't played the series yet, but you have, Lotus. I'm sure you're kind of looking forward to seeing this eventually.
Yeah, that would certainly be interesting. The game is like Uncharted with zombies, basically. If you've played Uncharted, you kind of know how this is going to work. It's not crazy action platforming set pieces, but there's definitely combat and, unlike Uncharted, a lot of melancholy. This game is miserable, as you would expect a zombie apocalypse to be.
Yeah, and finally, this was a big surprise. Kids in the Hall is getting a revival on Amazon Prime. This is really, really cool news, especially for comedy geeks. I am a huge comedy nerd, and Kids in the Hall was like something I watched a lot of because it had a lot of reruns on Comedy Central back when I got it. What's also really cool, this is where Dave Foley comes from and Michael McKean. This is where and all of the original cast are returning. That's the most important part. And Lorne Michaels, the creator of SNL, as well as the original producer of the TV show, is returning. So the entire creative team is returning.
That's a star-studded cast right there.
Yeah. So expect it to be good.
Very nice.
Part of they were similar to Monty Python in that they were an entire troupe of men that also played all the women.
Okay.
Because they didn't have any women in their troupe, so they just all just dressed up as women when it was called for.
Was it also like Monty Python in that they did incredibly stupid women's voices that sounded nothing like women at all? Nice.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
no.
Yes. Oh, it's like really.
One of the iconic characters is one of them dresses up as a lady who's half bird.
All right.
And it's just really disturbing, and that's why it's funny. Yeah. She even has like a giant egg that she's taking care of. It's
okay. Why not?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but I love it. It's very offbeat humor. It's a Canadian TV series as well, so it's really it was much edgier than SNL ever was at the time, especially. So just kind of weird and gross humor. In a time where that kind of thing wasn't readily available on the internet, that kind of thing like it is now. But it's very creative, and I'm a huge Dave Foley fan. News Radio was like one of my favorite shows growing up. So he was the main character in that, and he's also in tons of other things. But this is really cool. Good news. Do you have anything else for this week, Lotus?
No, I think I'm tapped out.
Okay, so we will wrap up the show for this week. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and Soundcloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Thursday for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, and everything else.
You could follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, or getting conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
Okay, everybody, we'll catch you then on Thursday.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.